What's going on, everybody? Ryan Miner here for the Face Off Sports Network, and we're here to talk about Week 8 performers that maybe we should be panicking on as we set our lineups for Week 9. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at @RyanMiner_FFB or X as it's called. Be sure to follow the show at FF Faceoff, and be sure to go to fffaceoff.com for all your fantasy football needs. And don't forget to hit this like and subscribe button down below. It helps us out a lot. So please keep them coming. We love them. I'm gonna change things up this week. Usually week after week, I've been kind of going into my players I've been panicking on, or players I say you shouldn't really panic on based on their performance. So I'm gonna look at week 8 and kind of recap it. So we're gonna start off with Ramondre Stevenson. And the funny thing about with Ramondre Stevenson is it kind of backfired on me. If you if I could really say that in a way, because you look at his fantasy points, and you could actually say that he actually overperformed based on what he did. If you look here, he had 20 attempts, 48 yards, not good. 2 total touchdowns. But you look at the very end there, fantasy points, 23.5. Okay. So I did say that there is a chance that Ramondre Stevenson bounces back. He bounced back in a nice touchdown way. But for the second consecutive week, we could see that he's had less than 3 yards per carry, 2.6 last week, 2.4 this week. Oh, man. But, 3 receptions, 17 yards, it's not really something that's kinda easy to brag about. We kinda look at that and what I have him at. Uh, to a 4? Uh, let's keep it there at a 4. Yeah, I'm still kinda cautious on that. Yeah, the fantasy points were good, the touchdowns were good, but you take away those touchdowns, it would be another bad week. He would have had less than 7 fantasy points for us, so touchdown saves us. So you can't really knock that part, but we can't always rely on that next week, week in and week out. Secondly, actually, you know what? I'm gonna talk about the second one here in a second because I should have recorded Monday night and I had something come up, so I wasn't able to. And our boss Anthony Servino is really cool about things come up, to kind of let things slide. And he's like, as long as able to get it done, but to my benefit, it benefited me and it's going to benefit you guys here because we're gonna look back and we saw how bad Michael Pittman was. And I told you before, Anthony Richardson's inefficiency was showing. It wasn't really good for Michael Pittman. And last week, Michael Pittman didn't have a good game. Once again, Michael Pittman didn't have a good game again, catching 1 pass out of 6 targets for 16 total yards. But that's not to help out that Anthony Richardson completed 10 passes for 32 yards. 10 passes, 32 yards. Come on. That is just ridiculous. But on the bright side of this thing, earlier this afternoon, I'm recording this Tuesday afternoon, Anthony Richardson was benched for the likes of Joe Flacco. And if you remember what I said last week, the boost that Michael Pittman had with Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson puts him back up into wide receiver 2 category. And as I said, when I had Anthony Richardson under center, Michael Pittman was a 7. If this would have continued this week, after seeing the performance he had last week, I would have put it at a 10 because I'm still freaking out. Anthony Richardson's kind of giving up. He pulled himself out of the game Sunday afternoon. Who does that? Why would you pull yourself out? Because you're tired? Okay, you know what? We all get tired when we play sports, but you got to push through it. You got to do what's best for the team. Push through it. But also, Anthony Richardson only had 1 year of true college football underneath his belt before he get drafted. So I don't know. Maybe he's just out of shape. Maybe the game's just too fast for him. Who knows? But as I was looking at it, Anthony Richardson's looking like a bust here. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you would probably agree with me, especially in Dynasty. Remember, like last year, we were fighting over who's a 1-1 between Bijan Robinson and Anthony Richardson. Looking at it overall, it was Bijan Robinson, 102. One league I took Jahmyr Gibbs. No one said anything, surprisingly. And that one's paying off better as Anthony Richardson went 103, and the rest has been history ever since. And we know how that's turned out. Looking at number 3, we were talking Brandon Ayuk, and I was at a 10 out of 10. And I also said, this should be a boost for players like Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Brandon Ayuk definitely had a very good game. Let me try to bring this up real quick. Trying to bounce back and forth between two monitors, and it's kind of hard at times. So we'll pull this up real quick for you. We kind of look at it real quick. I'm using CBS because that's one of the leagues I play in. And if we look over here, you can see that George Kittle and Deebo Samuel tied in targets with 7 each. As George Kittle had a hell of a game, 6 receptions, 128 yards and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel, 4 receptions for 71 yards. And what could have been a bigger game for Samuel didn't happen, but CeeDee Lamb finally bounced back. So that's one nice thing for Dak and the Cowboys. But like I said, Brandon Ayuk going down. The one that benefited the most was Deebo Samuel. Second was George Kittle. But so that one is definitely great. If you're able to trade for him, I would still try doing that if it's a possibility. But we'll look into that as time goes on. Our next player that had high was Tyreek Hill. And sure enough, Tyreek Hill had a good game. He wasn't too bad. He had 9 targets, 6 catches, 72 yards. Good for a little over 13 PPR points. Not bad, considering it was Tua Tagovailoa's first game back. So, like I said prior, we're not too worried about him with Tua coming back. Jalen Waddle had a down game, but I expect a nice bounce back. But man, I'm gonna get flack for this one. I was one who I was freaking out on was Sam Laporta. Basically saying through the 6th game, he had 1 game with over 5 targets, and that was back in week 1. Last time the game-saving touchdown against Dallas was a big savior, and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles, as we like to call him, tearing it up. I had Sam Laporta as a 8, and then he went on to lead the Detroit Lions in targets and receptions, getting 6 for 48 and a touchdown. So, he bounced back. He put up a nice tight end 1 week for, National Tight Ends Day, as everyone likes to call it, as it seemed like every tight end seemed to go out. So he's coming up on my list a little bit. He's at an 8. We'll be cautious. We'll put it at a 6 just because the Lions offense in general didn't really do much during that game. Like you'll see Jared Goff stats, he only threw for 85 yards and 3 touchdowns. But if you saw the game, it was a totally different game. It was very defensive and special teams game. But we're not going to worry about that right now. So that's going to wrap up last week's, overviews. I'll definitely take the blunt of the grunt, especially on the Sam Laporta, because if you guys freaked out and did what I did and benched him, you lost those points. So we'll kick into as we prepare for week 9, and we're going to start with my first one, and that's going to be Stefon Diggs. Now, Stefon Diggs went down Sunday afternoon with a non-contact injury, and I was kind of like looking at it, watching the video, saying, okay, I've seen players come off with, torn ACLs, walking just fine, off their own. But I've also seen players also collapse and not be able to do anything and need help off the field. So it's kind of hard to see what truly happened. So, waited, it was a knee injury, and it was a fear of a torn ACL. And then Monday came, and I was watching the news reports, and we're still waiting for, the exact call, what it was. And then once again, it didn't come out till Tuesday afternoon here that he officially tore his ACL. Now, prayers up for Diggs. He was dominating. He was a hell of a player there for CJ Stroud. But I'm putting this at a 10 out of 10. You're scrambling. You're trying to figure out what to do next for your fantasy football teams. I mean, the one who's probably going to benefit quickly as of right now is Nico Collins. But we have to remember also that maybe this could be the game where Tank Dell actually will step up, because he's got one more week. Because Nico Collins will be out for next week, and that should be good for week 10 to come back. So we'll see what happens there. But this one affects a lot, I think, of CJ Stroud, who a lot of us have drafted him as a top 5 quarterback, and he just hasn't performed that way, being basically almost a streamer type quarterback. So he hasn't done the fantasy football, giving us the football love that we love, like he did last season. But also remember, last season he had that late season surge, especially when he had the one game with 5 touchdowns. So we gotta look back at that. One player though I do have fear in, and that's Jordan Love. And that's not Jordan Love for Jordan Love himself. It's Jordan Love for his wide receiver core. You know, Jordan Love left the second quarter of Sunday's matchup between Jacksonville Jaguars. Up to that point, Tucker Kraft had a big 66-yard catch, touchdown. And then Malik Willis came in the second half to clean up after Jordan Love. Excuse me. But the sad thing is that Malik Willis only completed 4 or 5 passes for 56 yards in the second half. And once again, Tucker Kraft with another receiving touchdown, as we like to say, National Tight End Day. But, I'm not, like I said, I'm not putting the panic too high on what we don't know, because we still don't know the status of Jordan Love, because he already had this the beginning of the season where he only missed 2 weeks, where it should have been a multi-week miss. But as right now, I'm putting this at a 3 just based on his receiving core. So, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, uh, anyone else, Bo Mountain, the TV Wicks, you're still playing them. Those guys I'm kind of just hoping for the best, because, you look at Jaden Reed, we were starting him as a wide receiver 1, and he was performing well for us as a wide receiver 1. But, if he only finished with 2 receptions for 55 yards, and then, like I said earlier, let's not forget, Malik Willis only had 5 pass attempts in the second half. What this game turned out being was the Josh Jacobs game. He had 25 carries, well over 100 yards, touchdown there. So they're gonna, from what I'm seeing, it's going to look like they're going to try to put this offense on Josh Jacobs' back until we find out more of a status of what to do with Jordan Love. But I would lower all expectations going forward. As far as we know, Malik Willis is starting this week. I'm putting all expectations lower. So, Jaden Reed would be a wide receiver 2 for me. Not Jordan Love, Malik Willis, QB2. And a lot of people are going to say Josh Jacobs is a must start. And yeah, he is, just based on what workload he is. To me, I'd say he's an RB2, but, he's got a tough Lions defense. So I would look at that and kind of proceed that one with caution, as the Packers could actually struggle against the Lions, as we saw this past week, as the Lions just dominated the Tennessee Titans. My next player that I'm going to talk about, Ken Walker. Going into this game, the Buffalo Bills gave up the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position, making Kenneth Walker, a top 5 running back for week 8 in our fantasy football lineups. But Sunday afternoon, it was just not a day for Walker at all, as he totaled the ball 9 times for 12 yards. Although he did make it up in the receiving game. But I'm kind of chalking this up to missing DK Metcalf, because that whole team just seemed to flounder without him. So, and the sad part is, Kenneth Walker didn't even lead the team in rushing. It was Geno Smith who led the team in rushing with 16 yards. So whoop-de-doo, 4 more yards. But still, you can't. I don't know. It's just one of those games where you just go, what happened? What do I do? It's just It's just one of those bad weeks that we happen. I'm not freaking out on this at all. It's just, I'm gonna say DK Metcalf missing. That was kind of a thing that kind of worked against. It seemed like the Buffalo Bills knew how to shut down the run game. Jackson Smith and Jacoba ended up doing good, but he was the only really good savior on that team. But Kenneth Walker, if I were you guys, don't be worried going forward. He gets the Rams next week, so I'm expecting at least a nice bounce back here going into week 9. So keep your confidence in K9 himself. One person, though, how can we have any confidence in him? Do you guys know who I'm thinking of? No. I'm going with Davante Adams. Now, does it really matter where Davante Adams plays anymore? He hasn't been the Adams like that we've known in fantasy football last year and years prior. Outside of week 2 this season, he's done absolutely nothing for our fantasy football teams. Being traded from the Las Vegas Raiders to New York Jets, stats are just the same as they were with as they are with his buddy Aaron Rodgers. So, and the Jets also have the same record now as the Raiders at 2-6. So, I don't know where the brag is at here. I'm not seeing it, but Davante Adams is not what we expected him to be. Maybe still trying to get the rust off, which I don't know how you'd have any rust between Adams and Rodgers when that connection was there a couple years ago. But I'm putting this panic level at a 5 and probably going to be rising. But we'll see how he does in the next 3 games because he could actually make up some ground here. And I'll let it go as a little bit of a pass because his next 3 games before the Week 12 bye are Houston, Arizona, and Indianapolis. 3 very great matchups for wide receivers. And, is it going to be the Garrett Davante Adams get his way back? We'll see how this pans out. But if he can't do against these games, I'm panicking going into that bye. I already did Stefon Diggs. And my last one, going back to my home team, guys, and that's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown of my Detroit Lions. Now, you look at the scoreboard, you see, 52-14, the Detroit Lions dominating performance over the Tennessee Titans, and you think fantasy bonanza, right? Scoring here, scoring there. It's got to be the stars. It's got to be David Montgomery, Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe Sam Laporta. And like I said earlier, Sam Laporta had a bounce back here, like I said, on National Tight Ends Day. So he was the one that definitely got it. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2 catches, 2 targets, 7 yards, saved you with a touchdown. So we can't knock it too bad. Like I said earlier, Jared Goff had 85 passing yards total, 3 touchdowns. The Lions didn't have to do much, guys. I mean, the Lions, dominating defense, dominating special teams, and the ball was just so far down in Tennessee's zone that you didn't really have to pass it. Yeah, the game started out super close in the first quarter, and then after that, it was 35-14 at halftime. Detroit with the Detroit Lions lead. To finish 52-14, the Lions just didn't need to do much. So I just would say chalk it up. It's going to be one of those it happened games. But if you actually were able to watch the game, you'd see exactly what I saw, and not really set a panic meter at all. At least he scored. That's a bonus, but don't worry about it, folks. It's good. No panic level there. Set it and forget it. We're getting ready for next week. So, well, that's going to do it for this week's panic meter. If you have any questions, be sure to hit them down below. Let me know who you're panicking on. I gave you my 5. Feel free to shoot me yours. Do you have 1? Do you have 2? Do you have 5 yourself? Let's have some banter going back and forth. But until next week, we'll see. Well, not until next week. So we're done for the day. I'll see you guys next week.